10 Deadliest Serial Killer Couples by Kill Count. Welcome back to Odd Occasions, where we explore the unsettling and often unbelievable stories of true crime. Today, we're diving into the dark world of deadly duos. Serial killer couples whose twisted partnerships led them to commit unimaginable crimes. It's rare for serial killers to find each other, but when they do, their violent acts reach horrifying new levels. From notorious pairs like the Moors murderers to lesser-known but equally terrifying couples, we're counting down the deadliest serial killer pairs, ranked by their kill count. Let's take a closer look at these lethal lovers and the devastating impact of their sinister bonds. Number 10. Brady and Myra Hindley. 5 victims. Known across England as the Moors murderers, Brady and Myra Hindley are infamous for a series of murders that shocked a nation in the 1960s. These two met in 1961 while working at a chemical plant in Manchester. Brady, a disturbed and manipulative young man, was fascinated by dark philosophy, consuming the works of Nietzsche, Mein Kampf, and stories of Nazi atrocities. Hindley, drawn to his intensity, believed she had found a kindred spirit, someone who shared her willingness to break society's norms. In time, Brady revealed his dark ambition, to commit what he called the perfect murder. Hindley, captivated and complicit, agreed to join him. Together they plotted, and in 1963 they took their first victim, 16-year-old Pauline Reed. Pauline was a school friend of Hindley's younger sister. Hindley lured her by asking for help, searching for a lost glove on Saddleworth Moor. Brady waited nearby, and once they were alone, he attacked. According to Hindley, she stayed in the van, yet she knew exactly what was happening. But Pauline was only the beginning. Over the next 2 years, Brady and Hindley would go on to kill 4 more victims, their cruelty escalating each time. Hindley herself became notorious for carrying around a cord, one she used to strangle a victim, casually playing with it in front of people as if it were any ordinary item. Perhaps the most haunting detail: they recorded the voice of one young victim pleading for her life, a chilling record of their complete lack of remorse. Finally caught, Brady and Hindley were imprisoned for life. With the death penalty abolished in England, both would die behind bars. Hindley in 2002 from pneumonia, and Brady following in 2017. Their horrifying legacy still haunts England to this day. Number 9. Gwendolyn Graham and Katherine Maywood. 5 victims. Gwendolyn Graham and Katherine Maywood, 2 nurses at Alpine Manor in Grand Rapids, Michigan, became a deadly duo when their love affair spiraled into a twisted game of murder. In 1987, seeking thrills in an unimaginable way, they began suffocating elderly patients, targeting the most vulnerable for their own dark amusement. The two even devised a chilling plan. They attempted to spell out the word murder, using the first initials of their victims' names. Their plan halted at murd, as their crimes eventually caught up with them, but not before 5 innocent lives were lost to their brutal scheme. The secret of their murders unraveled when Wood, increasingly anxious after Graham's transfer to another hospital, feared Graham might harm more people, possibly even children in her care. She confessed everything to her ex-husband, whose testimony helped spark an investigation. The shocking revelation shook the Michigan community, with a Michigan Attorney General later stating, "The vicious nature of the crimes, the helplessness of the victims, the willful targeting of those victims because of that helplessness. These factors reveal a truly exceptional series of heinous crimes and a perpetrator more depraved than civilized society can bear." Once arrested, Graham received a life sentence, while Wood, who cooperated with the investigation, was sentenced to 20 years behind bars. A dark chapter closed, but their twisted legacy lives on as a chilling reminder of the horrors that can hide, even in places of care. Number 8. Alton Coleman and Deborah Brown, 8 victims. In 1984, Alton Coleman and Deborah Brown embarked on a horrifying 2-year killing spree across 6 states that left 8 people dead. Their relationship was a disturbing master and slave dynamic, with Coleman exercising a powerful hold over Brown, who followed his every command. Together, they spread terror across the Midwest, leaving a trail of violence in their wake. Their rampage began with the murder of 3 young children, aged between 7 and 9, before escalating to older victims, including an older couple they attacked with a lead pipe. Coleman and Brown preyed on vulnerable people within their own African-American community, often gaining their victims' trust before betraying them in cold blood. Their luck ran out when one of their intended victims survived and managed to testify against them in court, exposing their brutal crimes. Due to the multi-state nature of their spree, prosecutors ultimately chose Ohio for their trial, where the death penalty was on the table. Coleman was executed in 2002, while Brown's sentence was later reduced to life in prison. For the victims' families, justice felt bittersweet. The mother of one victim said of Brown's sentencing, "She was right there with Coleman, committing the same crimes. She bears the same responsibility for them, and she should share his punishment." This deadly duo's chilling crime spree remains one of the darkest chapters in the history of serial killer couples, a terrifying example of violence fueled by manipulation and a warped loyalty. Number 7. Ray and Fay Copeland, 5 to 12 victims. Ray and Fay Copeland, an elderly couple from Missouri, became notorious for a string of murders on their farm during the 1980s. When convicted, 76-year-old Ray and 69-year-old Fay became the oldest couple in America ever sentenced to death, a grim record that reflects the shocking nature of their crimes. Ray Copeland was well known locally for his fraudulent schemes, and the murders were an extension of his penchant for conning others. He would hire drifters to work for him, instructing them to buy cattle with fake checks. Once he had secured the livestock, Ray would resell them at a higher price, then eliminate the drifter to cover his tracks. Their deadly operation unraveled when one of the drifters, working on their farm, spotted human remains. Shocked and fearful, he reported his discovery to the authorities, setting off an investigation that ultimately brought the Copelands' crimes to light. Throughout the trial, Fay's defense argued that she had no part in the murders, claiming she was psychologically abused by her husband. In her words, "I begged Ray time and time again to please stay out of trouble. We had our home and everything paid for, so why would he turn around and mess all that up just like he has?" However, this defense crumbled when investigators found a quilt Fay had made from the clothing of her husband's victims, suggesting her involvement went deeper than she claimed. Ray and Fay Copeland both died behind bars, leaving behind a disturbing legacy of deception, violence, and betrayal. Their story serves as a chilling reminder of the lengths to which some will go in pursuit of greed and control. Number 6. Carol M. Bundy and Doug Clark, 7 victims. Known as the Sunset Strip Killers, Carol M. Bundy and Doug Clark became infamous for their twisted, sexually charged killing spree across Los Angeles in the early 1980s. Their dark partnership began after a chance meeting in a bar where Clark introduced himself as the king of one-night stands. The two quickly moved in together, bonding over disturbingly similar sexual fantasies that soon took a deadly turn. Clark began his spree by targeting sex workers, and his violence escalated to grotesque levels. In one horrifying instance, he brought the severed head of a victim home to Bundy as a sick trophy, and the couple kept it in their fridge, using it in twisted, depraved acts that fueled their relationship. Their violent fantasy world spiraled when Clark grew jealous of Bundy's interest in Jack Murray, a local country singer with whom she had become infatuated. Driven by jealousy, Clark pressured Bundy to murder Murray, fearing he might uncover their secrets. Bundy complied, luring Murray into a van with the promise of sex, only to shoot and decapitate him in cold blood. Eventually, the weight of their crimes became too much for Bundy, and she broke down, confessing to her colleagues and later to police. She described their spree as a situation that started out as a fantasy and just got badly out of control. Both Bundy and Clark received the death penalty for their shocking crimes. The story of Carol Bundy and Doug Clark remains one of the darkest examples of a deadly duo, a partnership built on fantasy that led to a terrifying reality and a horrific string of deaths. Number 5. Charles Starkweather and Carol Ann Fugate, 11 victims. In the late 1950s, 19-year-old Charles Starkweather and his 14-year-old girlfriend, Carol Ann Fugate, embarked on a brutal 2-month killing spree that left 11 people dead across Nebraska and Wyoming. Their victims ranged in age, gender, and social background, chosen completely at random. This unpredictability amplified the public's fear, as the young couple's killing spree seemed to have no logic, no pattern, only chaos. Starkweather, who idolized outlaws and wanted a life of rebellion, quickly escalated from petty crime to murder. With Fugate by his side, the pair moved from one town to the next, leaving bodies in their wake, including members of Fugate's own family. Their spree continued until they encountered a heated argument on a busy road. Witnesses watched as they argued, and when a deputy sheriff arrived, Fugate ran toward him, screaming, "He's going to kill me! He's crazy! He just killed a man!" Their arrest sparked a nationwide media frenzy. During questioning, Starkweather, who had idolized criminals, remarked, "I always wanted to be a criminal, but not this big a one." In 1959, Charles Starkweather was executed at just 20 years old. Carol Ann Fugate, who insisted she was a hostage, served her sentence and now lives in Michigan under a new identity. Number 4. Fred and Rosemary West, 12 victims. Fred and Rosemary West are among the most infamous killer couples in British history, responsible for the brutal murders of at least 12 people. Their horrific partnership began when they met at a caravan park. Rose was around 16, and Fred, much older, was already leading a life marked by violent tendencies. Together, they formed a deadly alliance. Fred insisted Rose work as a prostitute, often with him watching. Over the years, she had 8 children, fathered by Fred and her clients, and took on the care of Fred's daughter and stepdaughter from previous relationships. But behind this facade of a large family was a house of horrors. Their crimes escalated in 1973, when they abducted and assaulted Caroline Roberts, a young beauty queen who managed to escape and report the couple to the police. They were fined, but not deterred. After this encounter, they realized that to avoid exposure, they could not allow their victims to live. Thus began a horrifying pattern of abduction and murder. Their tactic was chillingly simple. Rose's presence in the car made the Wests appear safe, allowing them to offer rides to women who might otherwise hesitate. Once the unsuspecting victims accepted, they were brought back to the Wests' home, where they endured unspeakable abuse before being murdered. Fred would then bury the bodies in their cellar or garden, effectively turning their home into a graveyard. In 1995, the law finally caught up with the Wests, and they were convicted of multiple murders. Fred died by suicide while in custody awaiting trial, and Rose was sentenced to life imprisonment. She will spend her remaining days behind bars, her crimes leaving a haunting legacy as one of the darkest stories in British criminal history. Number 3. Raymond Fernandez and Martha Beck, 20-plus victims. Raymond Fernandez and Martha Beck, infamously dubbed the Lonely Hearts Killers, used newspaper ads to find their unsuspecting victims in the late 1940s, targeting lonely women looking for love. Fernandez and Beck's murderous spree is believed to have claimed the lives of more than 20 women, each lured in by promises of romance, only to meet a tragic end. Fernandez, a charismatic con artist, reveled in Beck's unwavering devotion. She left behind her children to join him, abandoning her life for a man she adored. Together, they created a cruel ruse. Beck posed as Fernandez's sister, allowing potential victims to feel comfortable with another woman in the house. This sense of security led many women to stay the night, unaware of the deadly trap they had entered. Once they fell into Fernandez and Beck's web, they rarely escaped. The couple buried their victims' bodies in the basement, concealing the evidence of their crimes, until families of the missing women raised concerns, leading police to tie the string of disappearances back to them. Their trial drew intense media attention. Both were sentenced to death, and on the day of their executions, their devotion to one another remained. Fernandez declared passionately, "I want to shout it out. I love Martha. What do the public know about love?" Beck echoed his sentiments, saying, "My story is a love story, but only those tortured by love can know what I mean. I am a woman who had a great love and always will have it. Imprisonment in the death house has only strengthened my feeling for Raymond." Together, Fernandez and Beck went to the electric chair, leaving behind a story as infamous for its twisted devotion as for the lives it claimed. Number 2. Inessa Tarverdieva and Roman Podkopayev, 30-plus victims. Inessa Tarverdieva and her husband, Roman Podkopayev, terrorized Russia for over 6 years, claiming the lives of at least 30 people in their brutal crime spree. Their murders were a family affair, involving Inessa's 2 daughters from her first marriage, 25-year-old Victoria and 13-year-old Anastasia. This family business targeted wealthy households, viewing robbery and murder as a chillingly routine activity. One of their most notorious crimes occurred in 2009, when they attacked a paratrooper, Dmitry Chudakov, his wife Irina, and their 2 young children. Armed with a semi-automatic rifle, they slaughtered the entire family, stealing only a camera, laptop, and hairdryer, items of little value compared to the brutality of their crime. Their victims also included 2 of Inessa's own goddaughters. Knowing that their father was a hunter with a gun collection, the family broke into their home. In an act of shocking cruelty, they tortured the teenage girls, gouging their eyes before stealing the weapons. Ultimately, police tracked down the murderous family. During a dramatic shootout with authorities, Roman was killed, while Inessa and her daughters were apprehended. Now imprisoned, Inessa chillingly remarked on her years of killing, "It's just like another day at the office." This lethal family's crimes shocked a nation, leaving behind a legacy of terror and a stark reminder of the depths to which even those closest to us can sink. Number 1. Henry Lee Lucas and Ottis Toole, 6 to 100-plus victims. Henry Lee Lucas and Ottis Toole are perhaps the most infamous killer couple, notorious not just for their brutality, but also for the sheer scale of their confessed crimes. These companions and occasional lovers met in a soup kitchen, both carrying heavy histories of abuse and violence. Lucas, scarred from a violent childhood, was forced into cross-dressing by his mother, a working prostitute who made him watch her with clients. Toole's upbringing was equally dark, marked by severe abuse and early exposure to trauma. Together they became kindred spirits, with a sinister, deadly bond. Their violent spree began with Lucas, who claimed his first victim at age 17 when he strangled Laura Burnsley after she rejected his advances. From there, the pair embarked on a murder spree across the United States. Lucas confessed to over 360 murders, and Toole claimed he had joined Lucas in 108 of these. While the exact number remains a mystery, their joint confessions painted a horrific picture of violence that left investigators struggling to separate fact from fiction. Toole passed away in prison from cirrhosis in 1996, while Lucas, initially sentenced to death, later had his sentence commuted. He died of heart failure in 2001, aged 64. Due to threats of vandalism, his grave in Texas was left unmarked, a final testament to the infamy that followed him beyond death. Thank you for joining us on Odd Occasions. If today's look into deadly couples shocked you, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more chilling stories from the dark side of human nature. Let us know in the comments which of these couples you found most disturbing, or if you know of other infamous duos we should cover. As always, stay curious, stay cautious, and remember, even in the darkest stories, there's always more to uncover.